Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the UKLC. My name's Scoundrel, joined by Orcs. Finally making my grand return after what feels like forever being part of the UKLC. It's been a while, and I'm so glad to be back with you.
Yeah, it has been a while, but I've had some games last week that are pretty eventful. But the academy team's still undefeated, so things haven't changed that much.
From what I could see, we were still in that kind of place where XL and Fnatic are still top dogs in the UK scene, which you would expect given the prestige of those organisations. But let's have a look at where we are in the UKLC so far. Take a look at the standings. We are heading into week 2, and you can see that XL, Barrage and Fnatic all at 2 points. They are 2-0 right now. Phelan, MnM picking up a point each, and Enclave, Envision and Demise down at the bottom at 0 points apiece.
And I think the two big talking points here are Barrage and Envision. I think Barrage being on 2 points wasn't something people necessarily expected. They came in as somewhat of a dark horse, bringing in imports from Australia and North America. It was a little bit unexpected, and it was hard to get a read on them. They have performed really well up against Phelan. They had a very good read on how to play the map, and that sort of led to that victory. And then against Envision, there was honestly a bit of a skill disparity, particularly in the bot lane. And I mean, even the top flares on the Riven, they picked a draft to punish him. They were never able to do so. And then you saw at the end, he managed to get a 1v2 double kills. So they were looking pretty good. And I think for Envision, when they have such a stacked roster with so many mainstays in the UK and the likes of Usurp, Prosper, Shikari, it was almost a granted that they'd be challenging the academy teams, not sitting at the end of week 1, 0-2.
Yeah, they've got some catching up to do, but we are only into week 2, so we have plenty of time left available for these guys to make a statement this week. And speaking of the games that we've got today, let's take a look at the schedule. We can see exactly where we're going to land. MnM versus Barrage will be your first game of the night. Then it'll be Envision versus Enclave. Fnatic taking on Phelan, and then to end the day, Demise, who Orcs just said needs to be challenging the academy teams, will be taking on XL at the end of the day with our final game.
Envision need to be challenged.
Sorry, Envision. Sorry, not Demise. I completely mind blanked. But we'll see what happens over the course of the next few weeks.
I mean, I think in this spread of games today, the first one is definitely a close one to call. I think from what we've seen so far, Barrage edge ahead, but MnM definitely put up a good challenge, and then the only convincing victory against them was from XL, who obviously have looked spectacular so far. So I think this one should be close.
I'm really excited that Barrage have brought in a lot of different styles of imports as well. I mean, it's probably some of the first times that we've really seen it in the UK scene, seeing almost like worldwide level imports coming into the rosters.
I mean, we've had a couple of instances. Enclave had Andy Bendy before.
Yes,
North
I remember
America.
Prelude and C was technically a North American player, I think, studying over here.
I think they sort of went in with a bit more of a let's assess the situation quite widely. I know that they referred to their performance coach, and it was very much based on trying to understand players who would fit together well in terms of personalities. That was a big thing that they took into account because they had some personality clashes in their previous roster, and they wanted to avoid that, which I think is a pretty smart way to look at things. I'm not saying it's always going to be the best, most optimal thing, but you've seen teams like G2 where all the players are friends and get along with each other works extremely well.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the only reason G2 are good, because obviously all the players are like insane. But I think 5 good players doesn't necessarily make a good team. I think them being able to mesh together well can be a big factor. I think that's what we're seeing so far, because on paper, most people wouldn't say Barrage have the most stacked roster out of the league.
I think actually we're seeing a lot of traditional sporting practices being implemented now. You know, esports are a team-wide level, and I think it really is part of G2's success. Sometimes, you know, you look at a roster and you think this roster should be performing out of their minds, but you know, some of the things that people often talked about when it came to Magi Felix was just that he just didn't talk, and so that you didn't have that kind of like that ability to sort of interact in game. Whereas, you know, it's when you've got 5 guys enjoying themselves, talking, not getting tilted, trying to think about plays going forward, sometimes it can be really helpful. And I'm not throwing any shade at Magi Felix at all. Of course, you try and build a team that maybe counteracts that. But what I'm saying is that it is important to essentially have players that are on the same page when you're playing in a team.
And I think always having a balance, because, I mean, the thing is you need someone to be vocal in the team, but you don't want everyone to be vocal in the team, because there can be over intensity in comms. Sometimes people let their egos get in front, and it just can become chaotic. And I think finding the balance, it's difficult. It's very difficult to do trials and be able to pick up just from a few instances of someone playing and go, right, these players will work together perfectly. But I think it goes beyond just, let's pick the highest elo players or the players with the best record. So yeah, I think it's an interesting approach, and I think up against MnM, that is a pretty strong challenge as well. I will be really interested to see how Barrage does against the academy teams, but before that, I think getting through MnM is a solid test.
Definitely, and we'll have to see how that goes. We are waiting to get into draft, and when we're ready, we'll jump in. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting discussion point. Not that, by the way, Fnatic's still performing admirably well, and obviously Magi has been slotted in really nicely into that team, so it's probably a pretty bad example. But you know what I mean? I'm trying to the sort of the emotion that I'm trying to put forward is that sometimes it is good to have people that are all on the same page and performing well, and that does really make an impact. Like with G2, you can see in the LEC. So Barrage maybe have found that kind of special ingredient, I guess, to try and maybe elevate a roster beyond what you'd assess them to be at their individual skill level.
I think that's the thing, greater than the sum of all their individual parts. And there's been rosters in the ERLs. I think Origin last split was a big example of a roster that if you look at the 5 players individually, like, it's okay, but together they worked in tandem so well that they end up performing better than most people expect. And I think that's what we're getting from Barrage. Not to shade any of the players individually, but I think they have come together, and their team play, their map play, the way they managed to implement a 1-3-1, which is something a lot of teams, even at this level, do struggle with, showed a lot of strength. But up against MnM, may have a challenge here.
I mean, MnM have always been a good team, and they've got some great players. Mummus is a fantastic top laner. If you have want someone to deal with flares, then Mummus is definitely going to be one of those guys. Achu, really, really solid AD carry. Kemera, who's been a bit up and down. I think personally, what I've seen from him over the UKLC, but he came in as a really, really hot talent and has just hopefully continue to grow. And Soft, I've always been impressed with.
Yeah, I will say Kemera in that game 1 last week was the reason when they won.
Yeah.
Just flat out. He was performing so well because Demise, they had a lot of scaling elements within their team, and it felt like MnM let the pace go a little bit back, and then Kemera he just kept things going in their favor, constantly finding opportunities to press his advantages on LeBlanc. Unfortunately, in the game 2 against XL, I think Soft was underperforming a little bit, but it's tough. When you're against the academy teams, it's a tough matchup, and honestly, you do see some of the mistakes come out, and this gives you a little bit of time to prepare, but we have seen a lot of bans come through. The Thresh targeted away from Hado, as is the Riven, and then the LeBlanc, something that Kemera has played a lot. The rest are mostly power picks, other than that Olaf, which is something Soft will lean on, but it leaves Lee Sin open for him. Yeah,
and something that I'm actually noticed that is fun for me to talk about is that I'm glad to see Hado back in the UK scene. He's actually been in the UK scene longer than I have, and that's actually saying something. So it's nice to see Hado kind of back on a UK team, playing at a semi-competitive level again, because it's he's a player that's been around in challenger level for so long now that he's got wealth of experience to bring to the table. So it's nice to see Hado sort of back in a competitive setting again, because for me, it's a bit of nostalgia, because there are very few players that I think existed in the era of Wawa, which I think that was before even your time. Anyone in the chat remembers the era of Wawa? Like, Hado was around that time, and for me, that's a big deal, because I've been part of the UK scene for that long that I remember those kind of players.
Yeah,
where we had Geo Bear and Wawa and all these kind of players. Hado was there.
I joined the UK League, retired, started casting, and in that whole time, Hado was consistent. And
Hado was there for like 3 years, maybe even before that. So.
Yeah, and so Hado obviously has had some great results in his past. Most recently on Diabolus when he managed to get to EU Masters, and on MnM he got wins under his belt. But in this current roster, a lot of people were thinking maybe it's not going to be the one that challenged it, and especially his summer split wasn't even in the UK, but it was in the Super League Orange, which was obviously hard to get to the top level there. But this roster, definitely something that can work for him. We have seen a bunch of bans picks come through. Lee Sin denied from Soft, but also a strong pickup for Sybil, and that means that Elise is a standard answer. And then the Syndra, a strong flex, but the Lucian, I like it. It's obviously a strong flex. It works mid-top AD, but I feel like when you've already taken the center, the impact of it is reduced by a fair degree.
Yeah, because you don't get to run the center AD carry here. So this is still on the patch where center AD carry is insane, right? So
yeah. And I mean, even on the new patch, she's still playable. She's not as good, but she's still very much playable. And I think the thing is, like, I wouldn't expect to see Lucian center bot lane unless they're trying to get really down with the lore.
Yeah, it's trying to play a full lore bot lane.
It's not Legends of Runeterra. You don't get double attack if your lane partner dies.
That combo, I had it in a expedition. You were watching me. I had it in an expedition match earlier. It was insane. I just couldn't deal with it. So let's have a look at the draft so far and kind of get back to where we are. Sof has got his Elise. When I think of Sof, I think of Lee Sin Elise. That's kind of what I think about when I think of Sof's really prime champion.
Bit of Olaf too.
Yeah, Olaf too, for sure. But those are the kind of champions I've always associated with him as a player. So he's going to feel comfortable on this Elise coming into the matchup. And obviously, like you said, Sibol denied the Lee Sin away from him. That's something that Sof does like to go to. Something that we saw ignored a lot was this Aphelios in the Nordic League over the last 2 days, but it has got through to the first round of draft here, and Barrage are going to pick up the Aphelios. It was one of the standout picks, I think, for any game that it was picked up in, had good performances. But obviously, it's the Senna versus Aphelios trade-off in this instance.
Yeah, and for me, this is an interesting one for Kevo because they have a strong mid-jungle, obviously, with this Syndra and Lee Sin. But in the later stages, this Aphelios is going to be a big part to carry the team. I've seen some strong performances from Kevo, but usually they're on champions which aren't your traditional AD carries. I've seen him on the Heimerdinger last week, which was a great performance against Vision. Seen him on the on-hit Nico when that was first really powerful for a patch or two. On the Aphelios, I'm hoping he puts in a really good performance, but it'll be a big test to see if, when it comes to the later stages, Barrage can rely on him. We've seen the bans come through, targeting the support with that Shen and the Braum. Did see Fias use the Shen last week when he partnered up with a Chew on the Ziggs, and then Aatrox denied from Flares and the Leona taken away. Again, there is flexibility with this Lucian available, and it looks like Barrage going for the Nautilus, so it's a strong 2v2, and that does mean they're going to be able to have counter pick for Flares. Now for MnM, Tom Kench works well in tandem with the Senna. There's no Thresh available, there's no Braum available. So I feel like that's going to be the obvious one, and they're opting to go for the Ornn as a safe blind. I feel like the Tom Kench with the safe option, the Nautilus and the Lee Sin and the Syndra. If you go Bard, it's very risky.
Soraka feels even riskier, unless you're playing Ornn in the bot lane. I guess we'll see. I mean, MnM is cycling through. We don't really talk about hovers too much. It is the Tahm Kench. It is the sensible option, as you said, Orcs, which means we're probably seeing a Lucian mid. And now that means Ericsson has the chance.
That's the thing. There's still a double flex between Lucian and Ornn. We've seen a decent amount of Ornn mid. Lucian can go on either lane. That means there still is flexibility.
And there's less flexibility because we know Ericsson's playing the Syndra. So.
Yeah. Almost 99, I'll say 99%, right? It's not 100% guaranteed, but almost definitely is going to be playing that Syndra. And now for Barrage, Flares is in a position where he can't pick something that can punish the Ornn too much because he doesn't know if he's going up against that or the Lucian, and he's gone for the Kled. We will get to see where those lane matchups end up going. Up against the Ornn, you can bully him a little bit, but Ornn can hold his own up against melee matchups, and even if the bear trap and the rope lands on you, Ornn's strength in his trades doesn't come down from sustain. A lot of tanks do rely on sustain. Ornn doesn't. The grievous wounds won't really bother him, and then he can also interrupt the yank back with his bellows breath. So that's a fine matchup in terms of MnM, but I feel like Barrage, they've given themselves a lot more tools to be aggressive with. Really strong mid-jungle combo, which they can take over the game with. They can move the attention to the top side because Flares on Kled, that's one of the best champions to dive in the game with. And then you have the late game security coming out from the bot lane. So a lot of tools to put pressure down. MnM, bot lane's a little bit more defensive. Top lane is more scaling. It's going to be whether the mid jungle of Sof and Chimera can challenge Sibol and Ericsson. I feel like there's potential to do that. Lucian obviously strong in the early game and Elise as well. But if they lose out in that matchup in the mid jungle, they might start to find some issues and the whole map will feel the pain from that.
What I will say, Orcs, though, is that the color coordination of MnM's splash arts was better.
Yeah, and that's always the biggest factor.
It's always the biggest factor when it comes down to these fights. No, but I think Barrage have definitely been on the on-streak team, and definitely a team that we have yet to see, I think, ever in the history of UK League of Legends perform to a point where they're putting themselves in top 3 position, really. Barrage have always been middle of the pack-ish. So
I'm just going to say it, not even middle of the pack, they've been bottom end.
Okay, sure. I was maybe being a bit generous, but I would say to an extent that this is probably one of the best platforms for Barrage as an organization to have one of the best UK splits they've ever had.
Yeah, I mean, it's early days, but this roster definitely looks good. This is a big test, because if they beat out MnM, it isn't a middle-of-the-pack team. It's a top-end team just below the academies so far, so it would mean a lot. And even if they do lose this match to MnM, it's still a big improvement, because previous splits were absolutely rough. Last split, they ended up getting relegated, barely any wins on the table, and then it was actually an alternative roster that got back into the league using the Barrage name, which got them their spot. So just not good at all. And I think that's testament to the difference there is in this split. I'm not trying to throw a massive shade towards Barrage. It's just this is a lot better despite what happens in this game. But I'm optimistic. I think the draft has given them a lot of tools. And I think although MnM have answers, they are very much more reliant on the mid jungle. I feel like if Chimera and Soft fall behind, they will be at Barrage's whim. Whereas if Ericsson and Sybil don't get too much success, they can still rely on the rest of their team to pull the weight a little bit in the early mid game.
So let's have a look at this, because we've got a pause, by the way, guys. That's why we haven't jumped in. Wouldn't be the UK scene without a pause right at the start of the game.
Yep.
You've talked a little bit about MnM needing the success through the jungle mid combo. So you said that really needs to be popping off to sort of set their team up for success here, right? If that doesn't happen, then okay, you have less options because it's going to take a while for Achu to get into a point where he's in big carry mode on this center, right?
Yeah, I mean, Tom Kench isn't the best at going aggressive. He's good at rotations, but you can't really force. Mummus is an Ornn.
An Ornn.
So, I mean, you can group up with your team and all, but that's normally in the mid to late stages where that sort of becomes a thing. So very reliant on a mid jungle.
So basically, Chimera and Soft need to have a really, really good start to the game so that Lucian can be the carry in the mid game while we wait for Senna to come online. And then if we get to a late game situation where they've done well, you've got a really good protection and really good team fight capability with the Ornn.
And I think other aspects are if they just manage to have an advantage over Sybil and Ericsson, that does deny a lot of elements from Barrage to come online earlier, because in the late stage of the game, MnM will be extremely strong. They're going to have Ornn items coming in. They're going to have that beefy front line. They have the Senna and the Lucian as the double AD carries. Lucian obviously has mobility in the team fight to play around the enemy team, but Senna just scales incredibly well. So I feel like Barrage, a little bit more of a time constraint on them. They need to get things going a bit sooner. It's not like a massive disparity because they still have Aphelios. Syndra's still very relevant, but they definitely want the pace to be in their favor. And I'm hoping to see Sybil go for aggressive early game, which we have seen from him typically, but can sometimes backfire if he's too over-aggressive.
Well, we are now into game. Looks like the tech issues have been resolved, so we're going to jump onto Summoner's Rift for this first matchup between MnM and Barrage. Now, we did briefly cover what we thought MnM needed to do. Barrage, what is it specifically that you think needs to work for them? Is it another mid-jungle combo, or have they got more options in the early game to activate win conditions?
Well, that's the thing, is that mid-jungle is very important for Barrage. They picked the Lee Sin and the Syndra, and mid lane is just super important in the current meta. But if that does fall through, they still have Hado on a Nautilus, who's very effective in skirmishes, very effective in setting up plays. They have Flares on the Kled, who if he moves from his lane, can pop that ultimate and run someone down. So I feel like Barrage, a little bit more options and will still impact the game in the early levels.
So, we are onto the Rift, and this is the first game that I'm going to get to livecast of the UKLC. They're going to catch out Flares here, who's gone a little bit aggressive. Soft coming round. Flares should be able to get out, though. He has got the support of Lee Sin coming through.
Losing a lot of health.
Losing a lot of health. Instantly forced to flash, and so does Chimera. Chimera gets first blood.
That's a good start.
That is a good start for a mid-jungle combo that needs to pop off. You've already burnt the flash of Flares. You've now got the potential for Mummus to find ganks in the top lane, which will allow Soft an easy way in, and Chimera's now got a first kill of the game as well.
Yeah, negates pressure from Flares massively, and just giving the extra gold to Chimera means that when he goes for that first back, he can itemize, get some extra items in his pocket and be in a pretty good spot. Up against the Syndra, you want to hit those power spikes as soon as possible. So
he obviously got a ward down. Not worth it for first blood, but this now allows Sybil to have more information, reading where Soft is going to go. You assume that most Elises are going to start at the blue side of the map, but he needs to now use this information. Maybe try and catch Elise out at a River Scuttler play. Just be as aggressive as possible, try and predict movements and see what you can do with the information that Flares gave his life up for.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why they want the information. They know how important it is to track this Elise in the early levels, because if she doesn't make the impact, level 3 to 5 when Elise is strongest is going to be limited to a degree. They're now looking for, I think he got spotted there, did the vision. Showed up for Chimera, so he knows. Hard to gank Lucian with mobility as well.
You say that, he gets stunned instantly. There is the Sonic Wave. He takes the kill. Actually, Ericsson picks it up, I think, with a basic attack there. That was a...
We saw that. I mean...
He must have seen it, right?
Yeah, thanks to our observers who toggled the vision, we saw it from his point of view. So Lee Sin showed up, and yet that still worked. Pretty rough, and... Now Chimera paying for using his flash in that level 1 sort of trade.
He's going to lose a lot of minions as well to the tower. That was actually a really well played from Sybil. We just talked about that he needed to have an immediate impact with the information that he had. Knowing which flashes were burnt, knowing where exactly Soft was on the map. Really heads up play. And that's what I wanted to see from Sybil in this situation. He definitely had a challenge with that early game start. And has responded really nicely.
Yeah, and I mean, Chimera didn't even dash, so unless it was interrupted in the stun, which I didn't quite catch, but he may have just used it before for an earlier trade. little bit rough there. MnM's actually trading pretty well with flares in this situation. Grasp going a long way, but Conqueror stacked up and turn things around.
Yeah, but Kled is deceptive. Very deceptive when you're trying to trade versus him. He can be very, very difficult to figure out where he's at. He's actually going to realize that he's probably just dead in this situation. He's going to get Scowl back, but it doesn't matter.
They bring Chimera too, so just ensuring he goes down no matter what the situation, even if he did remount. That's a second kill, and it's going over to MnM. It's not exactly the highest priority target, but punishing flares once more for that level 1. And I like to see that from both these teams. Flash is burned is the instant go signal that we are going to take over the map and just try and punish that person who doesn't have the summoner available.
Teleport back towards the top side of the map. Wondering whether Soft might even look to rotate back up there. No, the minion wave is pushing towards Flares. That's why he made that decision. He was like, okay, I can try and freeze this near my tower.
He did need to catch that. He has frozen it in a good spot, but I think a big factor as well is that diving to Kled is hard when obviously the dismount and the big HP pool with Skarl as well. But you see priority going over the side of Barrage's bot lane, and although it looks like there's a big CS lead for Kevo, will be caught up when he picks up this wave.
MnM has now picked up the Barmy Cinder. And that's going to make those extended melee trades that Flores looks for when you're playing Kled much more difficult now. He's going to have to be a bit more defensive on the top side. I think Sybil's unlikely to spend much time top side this game. He's probably more likely to invest resources into Ericsson here, and you can see Chimera gonna get immediately caught out, and Hado is there with the hook. They get him down, the stun is there too, and suddenly this is lights out for Chimera as Ericsson picks up the kill. Really good, I think, focusing of resources for Sybil here.
Yeah, and we said mid-jungle super important in this game. You have the Lee Sin and Syndra, a really strong combo, and they look to punish it. And this was a little bit what I was talking about as why for MnM it was more important, is because you have the likes of a Nautilus on the side of Barrage. So in a situation where if Sybil and Ericsson were struggling a bit, you can bring Hado up. Obviously they weren't behind in that scenario, but bringing him up made the pick so much easier to execute. And that's the power of having a pick like a Nautilus rather than a Tom Kench, who really can't offer too much other than safety and protection for your team. It's like Soft's potentially looking to contest this Dragon, but they have no vision.
Yeah, they have no vision. They don't know how low it is, and unfortunately, people were not in place to support Soft. And I think the back timing from Chu and Ethias just meant that it was very difficult for Soft to get into a position where it wouldn't just be a suicide steal at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Kevo's done a really good job of maintaining lane position as well when they made that back happen. Just for the sake of allowing Lee Sin to have a bit of free time here. I think Sybil's just going to jump over the wall, has to use a control ward to do it, but keeps himself safe.
Yeah, I mean, that's the cost of going for the Dragon. Obviously, moving Hado over as well, it means that inevitably the wave was going to get pushed into Kevo, and so MnM, they then can move around the map. They can bring Tom Kench over, but that doesn't mean they'll get anything more than a stolen camp, a couple of wards, because the issue is Tom Kench doesn't really set up the ganks well.
I think Flores in this situation is just going to have to survive as best he can. Maybe pick up Tiamat, clear waves. Not really going to be looking. I mean, I say that he's going toe-to-toe. MnM is just going to back off here. I mean, I guess, what do you think of in that situation? Wait a second, we can keep an eye on Chu here. That's a great hook from Hado and immediately gets eaten up by Ethias. Soft is down here, so maybe they look to bait, but Chu is very low at this point in time.
That's the power of Sanity. You can just heal straight back up.
True.
Chimera looking for the ult here, but Sybil's in the wings.
Oh, misses the Sonic Wave. Sybil's just going to back off again. He's a little bit behind in experience right now, but has got an entire top side of his jungle to clear. Yeah,
I mean, that's the cost of ganking so much in the early levels, but he will quickly pick up level 5. Chimera, now his flash is backing up. He's looking to still go aggressive in this mid lane matchup. Does have to be cautious, though. I think a big factor is that there's a lot of vision control in favor of MnM, and actually, Sybil, he might just walk into something here. Yeah, Sybil didn't catch Soft moving into his red side jungle. He's going to play it super safe. This is a really heads-up play, and he's actually brought down Flare as the flash comes through. Sybil's immediately jumping over the wall. Incoming charge, and it forces out the jump up from Soft. Wait a second, though. He's going to keep going. Flare is looking for the fight. Now comes MnM. Has got his ultimate as well. This is very tense. They are going to take the back out. They don't want to take the full-on fight in this situation, and Chimera will just jump over the wall. Yeah, good response from Barrage's lanes. I think Soft, he would have easily found the cocoon from in the lane, but it was just smart play from Sybil to drag it all the way out. Trade a flash, fast reaction from the Lee Sin, and then as a result, nothing really goes down other than a burnt summoner from both junglers and flares on top of that. So MnM, not too costly, but don't get the play that we're looking for. It's called Repel, by the way, Big Scoundrel. Just letting myself know. I was like,
What's that skill called again? The jump up. That's just what I'm going to call it at the end of the day.
The spider special.
The spider special. In that time, though, they forced out some backs coming from the MnM lineup. Sof is now going to make a late push onto this Rift Herald. Sybil may have to end up backing over the wall. He does. Sof isn't going to make that jump over.
I mean, Sof has just been looking for Sybil consistently. I mean, he might be in trouble here, but Sybil's low.
I think he is going to be going down. Unfortunately, that was a bit of a risky move. Hado has made his way up. Ericsson is there too. We have Tom Kench coming in with the ultimate also, so you've got to keep your eyes on this as Hado continues to push. They are going to pick up this Rift Herald. Here comes Ericsson, gets stunned up immediately. Suddenly, this is all over the place. He picks up the kill with the ultimate, and now MnM is the target, forced to flush over the wall. And I think they did pick up the Rift Herald, so they haven't completely lost everything off that engage. Hado's going to leave it at that.
The turning point in this play was Barrage's bot lane having priority and moving first. Tom Kench miles away in base, Achu miles away in base. Hado was there as the fight was just kicking off, and Kevo followed up shortly after. So a play that should have gone in favor of MnM ends up backfiring pretty massively because of the movements of Barrage's bot lanes. Pretty well played from them. However, the Herald is still in Soft's pocket. But for now, that mid-jungle matchup we're talking about, Chimera 1 and 3, not exactly a great spot to be in.
Yeah, as we said, they did end up walking away with the Rift Herald, so that has kind of secured the objective, but it wasn't very clean. It did take them a little while to get there. And movement of the bot lane means they can't contest that River Scuttler, and it's going to be a dragon spawning in just a minute's time. I imagine that's going to be a target for MnM. Flair's teleport should be online for that neutral objective should he need it. He could also just walk down with charge as well. He has that wave pushing in towards Mummus on the top side of the map, so he could just back and maybe head down towards this dragon and have that charge ready to go. Yeah,
Mummus wants to stay for this wave, but he knows there is actually real dive threat coming out from Flares because Clyde is just so good at diving. So he will get his reset off here, and now both top laners potentially in position to fight over this dragon. You see a reset has come in from Matthias. He now has the ultimate, but more importantly, he has the Sightstone upgraded, so he's going to be able to put down some wards in the area, but already there's not really much of a chance. Chimera getting zoned off this turret because of this big lean coming in, not just from Hado, but Sybil and Ericsson in the jungle of MnM.
They have no vision control on the entrances to their red side jungle. They only have that Rift Scuttler next to the dragon to really see what's going on. So unfortunately, Chimera just didn't have a clue where Hado was. He could have been right next to him, ready to dive that turret for all that we know. It's going to be the Infernal Drake, obviously not near as important as it used to be, but 4% AD and AP is always nothing to sniff at.
I think it's a big thing for Barrage because, a lot of damage coming in from that. Ericsson really fed so far on this Syndra. They're going to throw it on the Herald. The intention of this is to try and pull pressure away from the dragon area, but Achu might be in trouble here.
He absolutely is. A great start as well. Ericsson picks up the kill. Absolutely fantastic. And now he's going to be the target. The teleport in toward MnM away, and Barrage playing like we expect them to from those first two games. It has been fantastic so far. They're going to continue. Hado goes in with the hook, but I think they are going to back off. Nothing they can do under turret at this point in time. Just better to focus on the dragon.
And the payoff is coming in. Barrage, they found the favorable matchup in the mid-jungle. They got Ericsson really far ahead. And now in these team fights, he's just dismantling members of MnM. The burst is insane. Despite only having the lost chapter, he's hit that level 9 point, which means his Dark Sphere is maxed. He gets the bonus damage against champions. MnM going to try and respond with some pressure on this tower, but Barrage, knowing they don't need all of their members to be on the dragon, they'll move back up, and Infernal Dragon going to be taken, and it is going to be an Ocean Soul, which I feel is okay. Not exactly the best for either team.
Oh, that's very careful. Soft has to be careful. Repels upwards. Make sure he doesn't get caught by the ultimate. But it's a good response from MnM right now. Chimera jumps over the wall. That's going to be Soft going down eventually. And I think with the response of Kevo, they might have to be very careful because Ericsson's here. He has huge damage. A great stun as well, even though he gets rooted up. And Barrage have dominated these skirmishes, even without Sybil in this situation. Achu might even get caught out, forced to flash, immediately kicked back into the wall, and suddenly he's going to go down as Ephias does eat him up. The Sonic Wave is still there, so Achu goes down, and they pick up Ephias at the end of the fight. Barrage are absolutely sweeping MnM right now.
Slaughtering it, and Kevo looking good on this Ophelia, is constantly joining fights and finding good ults to pick up key members, but it's just Syndra. Ericsson, so monstrously fed, goes for the TP flank to clean up that play, and it feels like Soft is just overextending. He is looking for picks, and it is backfiring massively every time. They are not strong enough to go toe-to-toe with Barrage at this point. And I feel like they're going to have to wait a long time before they really come online with things like the Ornn and the Senna. They're now massively on the back foot. Barrage have those 2 dragons, likely going to be looking towards when that Herald respawns, and are just so strong right now. I feel like MnM just need to slow the pace down and stop looking for these really aggressive plays because they're just not working.
Yeah, but unfortunately, that pace is 2 dragons away, basically. They have 2 dragons to try and find some way into the game. Otherwise, you're staring down a dragon soul of a team that is already very far ahead. I don't think that MnM are out of it. It's only a 3,000 gold difference, and although at 13 minutes that is pretty significant, it's not so much to the extent where you're like, you can't come back from this. But like you said, you called it exactly. Without this mid jungle, without this Lucian being fed for Chimera, it really isn't looking good for MnM so far. I mean, Ericsson is basically one-shotting people at this point, and he's gone with the Hextech GLPs, so he has plenty of control in these team fights too.
That was the early win condition for MnM. It's missed the mark, it's passed, the Lucian's behind, the Elise is feeling pretty useless. They have to rely on the scaling now, the scaling components of their composition. The problem is Barrage aren't going to likely let that happen. And then we're trying to go for a play with Mama's hide in the brush, but that means the lane priority is pretty messed up. Again, they're looking for these aggressive plays, and the cost is Sybil and Ericsson are just going to take this tower. So really not respecting their opponents. Again, trying to fight and find some skirmishes, and it just means that Barrage can outplay them. And now with the mid tower down, I've talked consistently about how important this is in terms of getting control of the map and pushing those waves in. They're going to head straight onto the Herald. MnM, I just feel like at some point you have to say, okay, let's slow it down, but they keep trying to make plays.
They were trying to make a play in top lane where it was like, let's try and catch them out 4v2. But that's not going to get you back into the game. What's going to get you back into the game is desperately protecting your objectives and desperately protecting your turrets. And I mean, Soft, you can't win this 1v1. I know that you've got a Fires coming down, but
I mean, they just lost that tower despite him turning up.
And he's
they
just
lost
shown
the tower
bot.
mid.
Yeah,
now there's 3 people bot. Top tower's going to go down as well. They could potentially take 2 here because it's only Mummus, and it's just MnM need to slow the game down, and they don't understand that. They're just handing more and more gold over to Barrage. It feels desperate right now. And it's as you said, the game wasn't over with a 3k gold lead. But when they keep making these plays, inevitably it will be over.
Definitely felt to me like they should just be focusing on wave clearing. So I'm going to cough. Sorry. I still have the remnants of a cold left over. The Nordic scene felt it more heavily than the UK scene has, but
it's colder in the Nordics.
So. It is colder in the Nordics, so I'm just slowly getting over it. You know, I felt like it had to be like wave clear into turret duty. You know, if Barrage want to take a turret, force them to turret dive you, maybe use the turrets to your advantage, and you can take team fights that way. You've got a lot of CC on your squad. You know, you've got the ultimate from Ornn, you've got a cocoon from Soft. You have plenty of mobility with your Senna and Lucian. I really felt like if you were going to find an avenue back into this game, I don't really feel that there's many avenues back into this game now, but I thought if you were going to get an avenue back into this game, it had to be around just looking to try and bait Barrage into an over-aggressive play that you can maybe turn around with the CC that you've got.
Or just wait for better item breakpoints, you know. Get Chimera with a couple items under his belt, upgrade one of them, same with a Chew. Mummus would have his upgraded items, and then you'd be in a position where potentially you could team fight, but they just kept the pace going too long, too fast, and now they've taken a tower in the top lane. They are going to sacrifice the dragon for this. I do like this play. I think it's good to be trading when you're this far behind. They are potentially going for a second, though. This is where it might get a little bit risky.
Tower diving a Kled is always very risky, and he's going to still be there with that Tiamat to clear the wave if he needs to, but honestly, MnM just trying to take the turret. They're saying, okay, third dragon is third dragon, that's whatever. Let's just get the flat gold. The flat gold might help us.
My concern with this is I like the top tower, the first tower. The second one, though, you're going to lose an inner mid tower, which obviously gives up a lot of priority to the other side. You might even lose damage on the bot lane tower. This is costly. I think they may have overstayed to a degree with that trade. But Barrage, they're going to get the third dragon.
But it might help them, the gold might genuinely help them hit certain item breakpoints. I mean, it's unlikely, but maybe that was their thought process.
But this is just my problem. They're trading down.
Yeah, they're going to trade. I think they're going to lose
the tower for the dragon wasn't even trade. Great. Even trades when behind, perfect. But trading
3 towers for a dragon, maybe.
Well, it was 2 for 2. Yeah. But then they also got the dragon on top of that. So it ended up being favorable for Barrage. And on top of that, mid-inner tower is important with regards to priority on the map.
Yep.
Top inner, not really going to be that much of an issue. Teams will protect that heavily when it gets to the Baron stages of the game. Yeah, I like the initial play.
They went too far with
it. Went too far. And I think that's been the story of MnM so far this game. Gone a little bit too far, getting caught up in wanting to make proactive plays and it backfiring. Here they are looking for a fight onto Flares, but TP coming in, this is not going to go well.
I don't think so either. Most trying to do what he can, but Ericsson has already turned up. The rest of Barrage are here with a fire, but they are just backing off, and again, big collapse coming out from Barrage now. They're looking to try and get a flank play onto a fire. Hado is there. Sybil also with the Sonic Wave, but I think at the end of the day, there's going to chill. That's a big flash over the wall. They are going to take Kevo down. That was a nice play. Maybe Barrage overstepping their boundaries. Hado's now forced to back out. He will use that hook to get himself to safety. A kill is a start for MnM right now. I'm not saying this is going to bring them back into the game, but it was a good shutdown, and they also got a little bit of gold back onto their squad.
Yeah, went into Senna's pockets as well, which is important to know. Good shutdown on Kevo. He was caught sleeping on the rotation, and I think that's Barrage being a little bit overzealous, thinking they dominate the Rift right now, and MnM fighting back to a degree.
It's good. They need many more of that, though. They need more and more of that play. Remember we said that, you know, later game, you still have the Senna. You have a lot of frontline tankiness. You've got a lot of CC in these teamfight situations.
The Ornn items as well.
Yeah, the Ornn items is always good. You know you're going to scale well. I will say that whilst MnM had made some poor decisions, I wouldn't say this is entirely on them. I think Sybil had an excellent early game. Yeah. I think Sybil made the correct decisions in the early game, and Soft did not read him well enough. I think maybe even that ward genuinely helped Sybil out with his decision-making process. But I will say that a lot of this has been due to the good play of Barrage. Rather than MnM throwing this out the window, a lot of this was set up because Barrage made excellent plays in the early game.
Especially, they were punishing a Lucian, and Lucian isn't an easy champion to gank. That's a strength from the solo lane, having that dash. But the setup was there. Sybil able to execute on the back of Ericsson. Just really great play coming out for them, set them up to be in this position. Right now, Baron is spawning pretty soon. It's 2 minutes till the Ocean Dragon, and this is where things get a little bit difficult, because MnM would have to give up the Ocean Soul. There is a universe where I can imagine you sacrifice it and just contest the Elder and the Baron, but I don't think it's a great trade to necessarily take, but they're finding a play bot.
Finally, Soft Skanked paying off. He's done this quite a lot throughout the mid-game. It looks like Barrage are trying to respond by going aggressive onto Chimera in the top side of the map. Ericsson and Sybil are here. They're probably going to take a turret for free in this situation.
Yeah, this is the cost. In that trade, they will get the tower bot lane. So in terms of gold, MnM trading favorably, but in terms of map control, they've got no towers anywhere in the vicinity of Baron. If you look, they've lost all the towers in the top lane outside the base, all the towers mid lane outside the base.
All of their towers outside the base.
So that means the safe haven is at your inhibitor tower.
Yeah.
So you have to walk through so much dangerous ground to get to Baron. It's going to make that area even harder to control. But for now, that's not the priority. It is that dragon in a minute. I expect 100% MnM will look to contest this. I don't think Ocean Soul is the most impactful soul out of them, and obviously can be countered by Executioner's Calling or Morellonomicon. But for now, Barrage definitely setting up for it, and the question is going to be, will MnM look to contest this one? Because it's a minute away, and they're not really putting that much pressure towards it. You can see Soft on the other side of the map. They might actually be looking just to give this one up and then contest the big objectives, the Baron, the Elder. I
think they realize at this point that it's going to be I mean, if they contest the Dragon and they lose, the game's probably over at that point.
Yeah.
So maybe they say, look, we're close to hitting certain item thresholds. Maybe we can use those at the next big objective play, you know, specifically around that Baron. And maybe they look for maybe an attempted soft steal, but realistically, I don't know if they feel like...
Definitely not. No. I think if you go for a soft steal and he dies, you lose Baron.
Sure,
so I think it's not the play to go for. I think if you're going to contest it, you go for a 5v5 where you pick a carry. But right now, Ornn's at level 12. He's got both of his items secured. Not long before it starts handing out to the team. They're going to try and push up mid, but this is the issue with mid tower still up for Barrage. You can't do much to contest the priority.
And it's so easy to shove the waves back as well if you're the side of Barrage. And look, Flares is just saying, hey, look, someone come contest me because I'm just going to continue to push these towers. Gets a demolish on the inhibitor tower too. The Ornn ultimate is coming out. They're going to make an aggressive play here.
Stun.
Good stun though onto Hado. Stops the Mummus ultimate coming through. They're going to get the route onto Hado. In the meantime, the rest of MnM are being forced back. Flares is not even joining this fight. Good hook from Hado. They're going to try and go straight onto Mummus, who's forced to dive away. And in the meantime, Flares will back off at exactly the correct time. And this should actually give a pain-free Dragon Soul right over to Barrage.
Yeah, I mean, MnM tried. They looked to see if there was an angle to contest, but really there wasn't. Chimera got chunked out by Kevo, I believe. And the Ocean Soul goes over to Barrage. And obviously, there is power in the Ocean Soul. I think with Barrage's team composition, it's not the most useful. Definitely Infernal would be better. Even Mountain just stops the power of MnM finding a good engage. I do say that it will impact them taking the Baron, because obviously it will provide extra healing, extra sustain. They can essentially tank up the Baron as long as they want, and then they can wait for MnM to come challenge them and potentially turn, so it does make that easier. But I think MnM not overcommitting for that soul was the right decision. Live to fight another day, and look to contest the big neutrals, the Baron, the Elder in 5 minutes. Get some more spikes. Mumma's now level 13. He can hand out an upgrade to Chimera's Blade of the Ruined King. But my concern is still, yes, they were happy to give up the Dragon Soul, but they won't want to give up the Baron, and they have very little vision control in that area. You can see Soft, he's standing basically next to his base, so they can start this up. They have so far to walk through before they get to the Baron. I think they recognize they can't risk it. They can't risk the chance that Ericsson's waiting in a brush. I think they're trying it now, but you're just too far away. It's going to be gone.
I think there's nothing they can do. I do feel that MnM realized that team fights just aren't going to work for them. They tried to go for the center steal, but they don't find it.
I feel like it's not just team fights, it's a lack of vision.
Well, the thing is, like, this all leads back to what you were talking about when it comes to turrets.
Yeah.
They lost all of their turrets. They took many poor trades and gave up lots of turrets for those trades. And when you lose all of your turrets outside of your base, you no longer have those free wards and free areas as safety on the map.
Losing the mid outer tower is so bad if you're trying to stall the game out. And I think them giving it up for that attempt to play topside was a big mistake. They then gave up the second tower when they overcommitted top. And you could see Soft's position. It was around here where we're looking right now. Soft was miles away from the Baron, standing there because he knew he needed help to walk through the jungle. And that's a difficulty. You just have such a large amount of fog to walk through. You're very likely to get picked. And even if you do move through it safely, by that point, the Baron's already gone.
It's about 2,000 gold apiece on the carries for Barrage. They are ahead right now. Ericsson is building those spheres, trying to make sure that he doesn't get caught out. With actually poor vision for Barrage on the blue side jungle of MnM, but they don't need it too much. Achu is just going to back off as Haddo does, put a bit of damage down.
Gets a spell shield is the big thing,
yeah.
So threatening a dive in that regard. Obviously, if Flares moves up with that ultimate, it's concerning, but I have to say, one thing I'm really impressed by from Barrage is other than that pick onto Kevo, they played very respectfully and haven't overstepped.
Yeah.
Flares consistently backing off whenever threatened, as you're seeing right in front of you, and this gives a window for the rest of Barrage to pressure in. And this is what I'm talking about with this team. It's not just individual outplays that makes them strong. It's not like they have the best players in the league.
They're just on the same page.
Compared to the academies.
Yeah.
And it's just great map play as well.
Great stun from Haddo again. He's playing so well. I mean, he may end up giving his life for this, but realistically, he's playing excellently as Mummas pushes him further. Not even going to give up his life.
Okay, that was a mistake.
Sybil will give up his life. The rest of Barrage should be able to escape this, though.
Yeah, I mean, a little mistake there. Again, they're not flawless by no means, but it's just the map play, the coordination, having Flares push up with the Baron buff, and then the rest of the team pounce in response, and that's what's really impressed me so far from Barrage. Although there is still moments where they do overstep and get punished, and we just saw that from Sybil in that situation. Now,
like I mentioned, though, at the start of the game, what a story for Barrage as an organization. This is the strongest Barrage I think I've ever seen in the UK scene at all. This is such an excellent story for the organization to essentially completely refresh their brand coming into the UK scene, because I think you were right. I think when most people saw Barrage's rosters, you never really looked at them and thought, they're going to compete.
I mean, last play, even with Monkeys added to the roster, people thought that would be it. That they thought Monkeys, having made every single EU Masters for its entirety, they thought that would be Barrage back on the page, but it never came together. So yeah, you're completely right, but even that roster looked like it was worth something, but it never materialized.
It's just excellent that we finally have a team that has stuck around for so long. They really have been the beating pole of the UK scene. They have been like, essentially a lot of people were like, Barrage, 3 wins, right? But now we've got a Barrage team.
Now that's Enclave.
Okay, Flame Orcs. But now we've got a really, really strong Barrage team. And you would look at this roster, and I wouldn't look at any of these players and think, superstar. I mean, I think Haddo's really dependable. I think he's a great support, but I don't look at any of these players and think absolute superstar. But as a unit, they perform really well together.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that's the thing, is you always have to take into account with players like Special, Magi Felix, Dan, Xmadi. It's very difficult in the UK right now to be best in your role when they're on the conversation. But in terms of being the best team, or at least the best non-academy team, that's a very real prospect for Barrage. with this roster they currently have and the way they're playing. We do have a pause, unfortunately, having some ping issues for a Fire, so should hopefully get that sorted out shortly. But again, looking really favored for Barrage. I think MnM, they didn't get the win condition in the early game. I said it would cause a lot of trouble if they weren't able to find that success in the mid-jungle. And then from then on out, they were too focused on looking to get back in the game. They were like, you know, we want Elise to play when she's still relevant. But the problem is the game isn't about Soph anymore. It's like you missed your mark. You have to accept that and go, cool. We'll wait for the scaling picks to come online. I'm not saying just give up the game, but you should have kept that mid tower alive. That should have been your priority. It's hard. It's still, I mean...
It is hard to do.
Barrage weren't strong enough to just die freely, you know, against 5 members, or at least like a 1-3-1, especially with a Tom Kench and an Elise who can repel. They weren't in a position where they can just tower dive you easily. So I think it was one of those ones
and
where...
you had the CC of Mumus if you needed it.
Exactly. It was just... They were too focused on trying to get back in the game rather than keeping themselves in the game and waiting until things came back online. So has hit them. They're not out at the moment, but having the Dragon Soul against them with Elder spawning in a couple of minutes and, you know, the likes of this Aphelios, this Syndra being so strong, it's definitely an uphill battle from here.
Yeah, I do feel like it's currently 6,000 gold lead to Barrage. I do feel like that is a fairly significant amount of gold to overcome, but it is not insurmountable. I mean, you have got a 3-item Senna now, so you are heading to the stage of the game where maybe Senna can start to do some good things in team fights. I feel like, actually, despite what we've seen over the last maybe 5 minutes, but I mean, MnM have done a good job of defending where they could.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't actually lose that much with the Baron. Yes, the base was cracked, but they didn't lose an inhibitor. Soft?
Again, Soft caught out here. Flares just jumps over him. It's probably because everyone is responding to him once more. Flashes out the way, will get out of the Ornn ultimate. But look again at Barrage just responding on the map.
Yeah, that's a big cooldown to be down, and they are on the complete wrong side of the map for this Elder spawning in 20 seconds. You lose that, the game is over almost certainly, unless you somehow pull a miracle, because that buff is just so strong. But now Barrage, they see MnM on the top side, they're going to put pressure down bot, TP coming in, but the tower's going to die. Yeah,
that's all they wanted realistically off the end of this. Senna comes in, but will not get to do much. And I think Barrage, again, as you said, playing respectfully here, just saying, okay, cool, we burnt quite a lot for that situation.
I mean, if you just look at this bot side of the jungle on MnM side, so much vision control for Barrage. They have to walk through to try and contest the Baron. Elder Dragon's got great stun, stops the knock-up.
They're going to go in and try and get Ericsson, immediately uses the Zhonya's. He is safe for just a moment. He flashes out, brilliant flash as well. The ultimate comes in from Aphelios, and Mumus will eventually go down. Symbol just brought everyone over to the wrong side of the team fight. That's not the person you should be focusing, because the rest of Barrage are here, and they are here to win. They do huge damage. Great hook from Hado. He is on fire this game, and here comes the cavalry as Flares is ready to clean up the rest of MnM. This will surely be game, and Barrage will take the 3rd win, 3-0 in the UKLC so far.
Yeah, Elder Dragon not even needed. They force MnM to face check, and even though the engage was nearly good, the knock-up coming onto Ericsson interrupted by the stun, and it was just Barrage having a massive gold lead and outplaying their opponents, looking like very much the dominant force. I'm excited to see how they do against the academies, but for now, 3-0, as you said. Great performance.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, you can't really say much more about them. Well done to Barrage right now, because they've built a really good roster that work really well together and have continued to surprise. And beating MnM is no small feat. Like you said, MnM are a roster that maybe over the last 2 years you would say doesn't quite hold the prestige of past, but they've always been a competitive roster. They've always taken surprise wins against some of the academy teams.
I mean, they were the best non-academy team for the past entire year.
Yeah.
Obviously, it is a completely different roster. They did bring Mumus back, but they still are a strong roster. I think
MnM always compete. That's the way I always think about them.
I don't think this is MnM being bad. I think this is Barrage being good. I think another factor to take into account is it was clear the less experienced players and the likes of Soph and Chimera definitely struggled here. The win condition was on their backs, and I think Soph in particular, we've seen from his champion pool, the Olaf, the Lee Sin, the Elise, these are picks that you want to be making an impact on. You don't want to sit back and let your teammates do the work, and I think that's what cost them here, is he felt, despite struggling in the early game when he fell behind because Chimera was punished so hard, he felt that he still had to keep trying to force things to get back in the game. But in reality, he ended up giving up too much on the other side of the map. And he ended up with a lot of things backfiring in his face. And I think that's what cost them. But Barrage, by all means, looks stellar.
Yeah, like I said, I don't want to rag on MnM too much here. I think that Barrage, especially Sybil, executed that early game with Ericsson so well. Soft just unfortunately was behind the pace ever so slightly, and Sybil just really catapulted Barrage's win condition and at the same time shut down MnM's early game win condition as well. So it was just really, really good play from Sybil especially, and Barrage as a whole. They looked fantastic.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that I've enjoyed watching so much about this Barrage team. Like, yes, Sybil had a great game individually, but I think it's just their team play, their movements around the map, the understanding of where to apply pressure.
Hado played out of his mind as well.
Yeah, I just think that you can ignore the mechanical stuff, you can ignore the micro play, and they just look like such a good team. And I think that's what's really refreshing to see, because right now, in some situations, it feels like the academy teams don't need to play around the map smart. They just outskill you. Magi Felix can pick Vladimir, go up against anyone you want, and then end up just winning because it's Magi Felix. But it's refreshing to see a roster like this who they understand the game, and that's what propels them to victory. So I'm really excited for their matchup against one of the academies.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to it. Maybe they can find, maybe not even an upset, you know, it depends on how they're doing. We could really call that an even match. Now, we're going to jump to a quick break. When we're back, we would jump into our next game, which I believe is Envision versus Enclave. Don't go anywhere.